Replacement theology, also known as supersessionism, not only teaches that the church has replaced Israel, but it also abolishes the Abrahamic and Mosaic covenants. But the covenant belongs to us. What many Christians fail to realize is that the church did not come into existence because the Israelites rejected Messiah. Yahshua's ministry began with believers who were the bloodline descendants of Israel. They are the ones who turned the world upside down. Replacement theology is a false doctrine used by the Gentile church to erase the people of the Most High, but they have no covenant. In this third session of the series, When Did the Christians Replace Israel?, we will reveal what the blessings of Abraham really mean. Before we get started, let me clarify for those who are new to the channel that when I say church, I'm mainly speaking about the religious institution created by the Romans, the Roman Catholic Church. Now, most refer to the church as those who are in Christianity, but surely you know that what is represented today as the church is not a true reflection of the called out assembly led by the apostles. So for ease of understanding, when I say church, I'm referring to the religious body responsible for corrupting the message of the gospel, persecuting the true believers, and sanctioning the enslavement and mistreatment of the true descendants of Israel around the world. The assembly of believers who followed Messiah were the elect that the scripture is talking about in Matthew 24:24 and Matthew 24:31. They did not refer to themselves as the church or Christians. So please do a study on the origin of the word church. You can also refer to the playlist called Deception in the Church to find out how we ended up with this religion created by the Catholic Church. Now let's get into the lesson. We're going to continue with the Abrahamic covenant, which is connected to the Mosaic covenant. And in the last session, we said that Abraham obeyed by leaving the land of Ur and moving to the land that he was shown. Let's read this from Genesis 13. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. So, apparently the word seed is causing confusion for a few folks, so I want to talk about that. It has been taught that when we see the word seed in reference to the blessing and promise given to Abraham, that it should always be interpreted as though we're speaking of Messiah. But if we read it in context in verse 15, for all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. Why would Messiah need to be given land rights? I'm also going to show you another passage where it clearly shows that he is not the seed this verse is referencing. Let's look at verse 16 again. It says, and I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth. Now we need to ask ourselves, if Messiah would be made as the dust of the earth, or is the logical interpretation that Abraham's descendants would be as the dust of the earth? This particular verse is speaking of Abraham's natural descendants who would later inherit the land, and they would be multiplied to the extent that they would be as the dust of the earth. Let's look at the confirmation here in Genesis 15:13. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. Obviously, we know that this could not be talking about Messiah here, because he was not a stranger in a land that was not his. And in addition, it says the seed, singular, would be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, plural. Based on the comments received after the last session, some are getting this confused, because Paul said in Galatians 3:16, let's read that, now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ. However, note that it said to his seed were the promises made. We see duality here, being some of the blessings represented are natural things, and he's also given a promise that would represent spiritual things, and we'll talk about that later on. So just because it says seed in regard to Abraham's covenant does not mean it's talking about Messiah in each instance. You have to read in context to get the understanding, because we have to be able to differentiate between spiritual and natural things. It is because of the spiritual that we receive in the natural, but there is a difference. There are those who receive from the kingdom of heaven by faith, and they are receiving spiritual things. Let's keep going. Let's look at this verse in Galatians 3:7. Know ye therefore that they which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham. Did you catch that? They are the children of Abraham. It does not say they are the children of Israel. There is a duality to Abraham's blessing. The blessings and promise bestowed upon him represent things given to his natural seed and spiritual seed. So shouldn't we be asking, what exactly was he promised that can only be received by faith? Because it's not uncommon to hear believers say, the blessings of Abraham belong to me, and they're often referring to wealth and riches. But let's examine this carefully. Let's look at this example of someone receiving by faith. This is coming from Matthew 15:21 through 28. It's talking about this Canaanite woman who wanted to have her daughter healed. So she came to Messiah and she says, have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. He ignored this woman. It says in 23, he answered her not a word. And then his disciples came and told him to send this woman away because she kept crying after them. So he answers the woman and he says, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I don't know why most people seem to ignore this sentence. He tells you, I was sent unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Look at what the woman did. In verse 25, she came and worshiped him, saying, Lord, help me. So he finally answers and says, it's not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs. It's not right to take the children's bread and give it to dogs. He called this woman a dog. Listen to what she says in 27. Truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. So he answers and says unto her, O woman, great is thy faith. Be it unto thee, even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. The fact that this is a woman of Canaan should get your wheels turning right there, because the Canaanites were the enemies of Israel. But this woman was able to receive by faith. This is telling us that even though the promise was made to Abraham and his seed, it does not exclude Gentiles who are able to receive by faith. Did this act make her Israel? No, it didn't. So we need to take another look at the Abrahamic blessing to see what it really entails. We're going to look at Galatians 3:9 through 14. So then they which be of faith are blessed with faithful Abraham. For as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, Cursed is every one that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law to do them. And this is why we're in our predicament, family. We did not continue in all things written in the law, and it brought a curse upon the nation. So here is the remedy. We look at verse 11. But that no man is justified by the law in the sight of Yah, it is evident, for the just shall live by faith. And the law is not of faith, but the man that doeth them shall live in them. So it's saying Messiah has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. For it is written, Cursed is every one that hangeth on a tree, that the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles. The blessing of Abraham comes upon the Gentiles through Messiah, that we might receive. What are they receiving? What are we receiving? The promise of the Spirit through faith. So Messiah did what we could not do as a nation. He fulfilled all things as it pertains to the law. And as a result, men, women, Jew, Greek, slave or free can receive the promise of the Spirit through faith. This is a redemptive work that extended to all men to reverse what happened in the garden. Because when Adam sinned, it extended to all men. Death extended to all men. But did you know that Abraham died before this promise was fulfilled? Even though others were able to receive, because of him, he did not receive it before he died. Neither did many of our forefathers. Let's read this. This is from Hebrews 11:8 through 13. By faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed. And he went out, not knowing whither he went. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. They were believing the Most High for something that had been promised to them. Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky in multitude, and as the sand which is by the seashore innumerable. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. This was the spiritual blessing that they knew would be coming, but they did not partake of it before they died. So here we see in Hebrews 11:39 through 40, where it says, "And these all, having obtained a good report through faith, received not the promise." What is the promise? The outpouring of the Spirit, the Ruach. This was a spiritual blessing for those who would receive by faith. By having the Spirit of Yah on the inside of us, He enables us to obey the commands of Yah. We understand how to rightly divide and discern the spirit of the law. It says, God having provided some better thing for us, that they without us should not be made perfect. They could not receive apart from us. So they died before the Spirit was poured out, because the Most High would not allow them to receive it apart from us. So Gentiles are trying to claim the covenant, but that is reserved for the children of Israel. Now, let's go back and look at the blessings given to Abraham in Genesis 12, when he had the faith to believe the Most High and leave Ur and go into the land he was shown. 1, he was told that he would be made into a great nation. Is this a natural or a spiritual blessing? This is natural. He would have many descendants and they would become a great nation. Number 2, I will bless you. This was specific to Abraham. Abraham would be blessed. Number 3, I will make your name great. This is speaking of his reputation. People around the world still know who Abraham is. Number 4, you will be a blessing. He would be a blessing. He would be placed in a position where he was able to bless others. Number 5, I will bless those who bless you. Whoever curses you, I will curse. Now this was given to him as a blessing, but Isaac later spoke this same blessing over Jacob. Number 6, he was given land rights. This land was supposed to be given to his descendants. And number 7, all peoples on earth will be blessed in you. This is a spiritual blessing. So, in churches, people are claiming the blessings of Abraham. Are they all going to be a great nation? Will they all have a great name? Will all people of the earth be blessed through them? No. Some of these things were specific to Abraham. Some were specific to Abraham and his natural seed. And some are spiritual blessings. Number 7, all people on earth who are able to believe are able to receive by faith. But do you see what's missing here? There isn't anything here about Abraham being a father of many nations and kings coming from him. Also, the Most High really didn't add the specifics about the land until much later. But he didn't get a new Abrahamic covenant. Let's go deeper with this. We need to know if these additions constitute a new covenant, because if so, we should see in Scripture verses talking about Abraham's first covenant, second covenant, third covenant, or Abraham's old covenant and his new covenant. So let's take a look at Genesis 17, 4 through 10, where the Most High appears to him again. The first time he gives this covenant or makes the covenant with Abraham, Abraham was 75. Now he's 90. And he's saying to Abraham, this covenant is between me and you. I'm going to multiply you exceedingly. He also tells him, you're going to be a father of many nations. Well, this was not stated previously. Then he also changes his name from Abram to Abraham. He also tells him that I'm going to make many nations of thee. He tells him this covenant is between me and you and your seed in their generations. So this is further confirmation that whenever you see seed as it pertains to the covenant with Abraham, it's not just talking about Messiah or one person. It says thy seed after thee in their generations for an everlasting covenant. He also says the land where you are a stranger will be given to you. And then in verse 10 he says, this is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised. Now, this was not stated previously either. So the question we should be asking is, when we see these additional things mentioned regarding the covenant, are we looking at a new covenant with Abraham, or is the Most High restating his promises to Abraham with modifications? That's the question we should ask. Also, where it says, this covenant is between me and thee and thy seed after thee in their generations. Did Ishmael and the sons he had with Keturah get everything that was promised? No, because Abraham separated them from Isaac, and he left the land and most of his possessions to him. Why? Because the covenant rights passed on to Isaac and then to Jacob. The other sons received gifts. This will be important for you to remember later. Let's keep going. So I want to read an excerpt from this article, Is It Legal to Change a Contract After Signing? This is from Legal Match. And it talks about contract modification. And it says, in general, the law defines the word contract as a legally binding agreement made between two or more parties that outlines the rights and duties governing their arrangements. Contracts can be created through either oral or written agreement. Regardless of the form that a contract takes, oral versus written, a contract can usually be modified at a future date. A contract modification refers to a situation where the contracting parties agree to change the terms of their original agreement. For example, when a person receives a job offer, the hiring company may require them to sign an employment contract. If the person stays at the company long enough to get a promotion, then they may sign a modified employment contract that includes their new job title and any salary increases. This has happened to me. When I was working in education, I had a contract, but each year we had to renew. Sometimes there would be slight modifications, but it did not change the fact that I had a contract with that employer. Now, the article goes on to say, why might contract modification be necessary? So it gives a list of reasons why a modification would be used. It says to shorten or extend the duration of the contract, to alter quantity or price items, to remove some things in a contract, to change specific terms, such as the method of payment, delivery, etc. So it also says In addition, an alteration of contract may also need to happen for reasons outside of the party's control. For instance, it may be necessary to modify the terms of a contract if a newly passed regulation would make those terms or the contract itself illegal. In some cases, a judge may order a contract to be modified if it helps to resolve a dispute over the contract or some of its terms. And I'm sharing this with you for a reason, but let's keep going. Now, as we go on, I want to show you what Messiah, the one who served as mediator, had to say about it. This comes from Matthew 5:17 through 22. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. Now that's where we need to stop and pause and think on that. Why would he say he didn't come to destroy the law or the prophets if the intent was to bring in a new agreement? If it's new, it has not existed before. Let's continue to see what else he says. Till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments, and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees. Why would he say that our righteousness has to exceed theirs? Because they were not keeping it. And I'll show that to you in a minute. Let's keep reading. So, if your righteousness does not exceed that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. 21, you have heard that it was said of them of old time. Now listen to see what he's going to refer to. You have heard that it was said of them of old time, thou shalt not kill. What is he referring to? The commandments. And whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you, that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of hell fire. Please pay attention to what he just said. He's pointing directly to the commandments, but he goes deeper than what was written to show the spirit of the law, which is the condition of the heart. The covenant is based on obedience. What he's showing us that he's also, or the Most High is also concerned about what is in our heart. The fulfilling of the Most High's laws now is not only focusing on the letter, but the spiritual intent. These two things work together. You need to know what the Most High's will is. You need to know what things he hates. You need to know that adultery is wrong. And this is why he's writing it on our hearts and placing these things in our minds. Now let's see why he said our righteousness has to exceed that of the scribes and Pharisees. This comes from John 7:13 through 22. And the Jews marveled, saying, How knoweth this man letters, having never learned? So he responds to them and he says, My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine. He'll know whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself. So he says, he that speaketh of himself seeketh his own glory, but he that seeketh his glory that sent him, the same is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Then he asked, did not Moses give you the law? And yet none of you keepeth the law. Why go ye about to kill me? The people answered and said, Thou hast a devil. Who goeth about to kill you? And he answered and said, I have done one work, and you all marvel. Moses therefore gave unto you circumcision, not because it is of Moses, but of the fathers. Who is he speaking about? Those who came before Moses. So some of these things that were passed down in the Mosaic Covenant, Noah kept, Abraham kept, Jacob kept. And ye on the Sabbath day circumcise a man. So now we need to go back and think about this, because he's telling them that these laws were in place before Moses. We covered that last time. So we were taught that in the new covenant we don't have to keep the commandments because they were done away with. It's old. We're now under the law of love. And this has created a lot of confusion. Is the Christian church really under the law of love? If we are to examine the actions and laws sanctioned by the church to kill, steal, and destroy indigenous people and our people, how does this law of love work exactly? It is only when you go back to what was written in the Mosaic Covenant that you see the standard, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, etc. So I guess it's safe to ask, if we have a new covenant, what are the terms of the agreement? Here are 7 major differences so that you can determine if this is a new covenant or if modifications were made to the original enacting a renewed covenant. So for ease of understanding, I will read it as old versus new. So the old covenant leads to death, while the new covenant gives life. The old covenant is a shadow, while the new covenant is the reality. The old covenant had an earthly tabernacle, while the new covenant has a heavenly tabernacle, and our bodies are temples. In the old covenant, the priesthood was in the lineage of Aaron, while the new covenant priesthood is after the order of Melchizedek. In the old, Moses and the prophets were mediators, while in the new, Messiah is the mediator. In the old, the law was written in stone tablets, while in the new, the law is written in our hearts. In the old covenant is of the letter, while the new covenant is of the spirit. In the old covenant, remembrance of sin was done away with, where they had to do it yearly, while in the new, we have forgiveness and the washing away of sin once and for all, because Messiah now serves as that sacrifice. So again, I want to ask the question, is it new or are these modifications? Because if it's new, I need to know why the apostles set a modified version of it in place for Gentile converts. In Acts 15, the apostles and elders sent a letter to the Gentile converts specifying the guidelines they were to keep as new believers. Why? Because Judaizers were harassing them and telling them that they needed to be circumcised and they needed to keep the law of Moses. These were Pharisees, by the way. So the Israelite leaders, made up of the apostles and the elders, assembled and determined what the guidelines would be. So if you look at verse 28, they say they got together and they prayed about this. And it seemed good to them and to the Holy Spirit to lay upon you no greater burden than these necessary things. What are the things? Verse 29. That you abstain from meats offered to idols, and from blood, and from things strangled, and from fornication, from which if you keep yourselves, you will do well. All right, so do we see anything that was not already in the law? Do we see the law of love? So this is also a good place to point out that there are some who say, well, when you see Gentile in the New Testament, it's talking about the northern kingdom. But if this was talking about the northern kingdom, then what you're saying is that the house of Judah was held to the laws given under Moses, but the northern kingdom only had to do these 4 things. Now let's look at this in Galatians 2, 1 through 6. Then after 14 years, I went up again to Jerusalem. This is Paul speaking, with Barnabas, and also took Titus with me. And I went up by revelation and communicated to them that gospel which I preach among the Gentiles. Paul preached to both Jews and Gentiles, but privately to those who were of reputation, lest by any means I might run or had run in vain. Yet not even Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. And this occurred because of false brethren, secretly brought in, who came in by stealth to spy out our liberty, which we have in Messiah, that they might bring us into bondage, to whom we did not yield submission even for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might continue with you. So we see that Titus served with him, but Paul did not compel him to be circumcised. He says Titus was Greek, and that would align with the guidelines the apostles and elders had put in place. So Paul was speaking with a specific group of people, letting them know that Titus, who was Greek, was not compelled to be circumcised. But we see here in Acts 16:1, where Paul has Timothy circumcised. Listen to this. Then he came to Derbe and Lystra, and behold, a certain disciple was there named Timothy, the son of a certain Jewish woman who believed, but his father was Greek. He was well spoken of by the brethren who were at Lystra and Iconium. Paul wanted to have him go on with him, and he took him and circumcised him because of the Jews who were in that region, for they all knew that his father was Greek. So Timothy was of Jewish and Greek ancestry. But Paul didn't have Titus circumcised. It just says Titus was Greek. But here we see that Timothy's mother is Jewish. Why did he compel Timothy to be circumcised? Let's keep going. Now make sure you pay close attention here, because many teach that Paul is the one who says the laws, statutes, and commandments should no longer be kept. And what you'll see after I read these passages is that there were different guidelines for the Gentile converts, but Paul continued to observe the law. So this comes from Acts 21:17 through 25. It's talking about when Paul and those who ministered with him came to Jerusalem. They met with the elders. They met with the apostles and the elders there, and they began to tell them all of the great things that the Most High was doing through them in his ministry to the Gentiles. And verse 20 says, and when they heard it, they glorified the Lord and said unto him, Thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are which believe. Now we need to stop and just think about that for a minute, because that exposes the lie that all of the Jews rejected the gospel. This says thousands believe. Where did they all go? Where are their descendants? That's just food for thought right there. So they said, See how many thousands of Jews there are which believe, and they are zealous of the law, and they are informed of thee, that thou teachest all the Jews which are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, saying that they ought not to circumcise their children, neither to walk after the customs. These were the Jews who were among the Gentiles in these areas where Paul ministered. The Judaizers were saying that Paul was teaching them that they did not have to abide by the law, statutes, and commandments. So verse 22, this is what they advised Paul to do. They said, we have 4 men which have a vow on them. Take them and purify thyself with them, and be at charges with them, that they may shave their heads, and all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning thee are nothing. In other words, they will know that it's not true that you're not abiding by the law. Let's go on. Whereof they were informed concerning thee are nothing, but that thou thyself also walketh orderly and keepest the law. Verse 25, as touching the Gentiles which believe, we have written and concluded that they observe no such thing, save only that they keep themselves from things offered to idols. They're repeating the same 4 things, and from blood, and from strangles, and from fornication. Well then, shouldn't we know what the terms of the covenant are? How else are we going to lay claim to what was promised? Listen to this from Leviticus 26:38 through 46. And ye shall perish among the heathen, and the land of your enemies shall eat you up. And they that are left of you shall pine away in their iniquity in your enemies' lands. And also in the iniquities of their fathers shall they pine away with them. If they shall confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their fathers with their trespass, which they trespassed against me, and that also they have walked contrary to me, and that I also have walked contrary unto them, and have brought them into the land of their enemies, if then their uncircumcised hearts be humbled, and they then accept of the punishment of their iniquity, then will I remember my covenant. Listen to this. With Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember, and I will remember the land. The land also shall be left of them, and shall enjoy her Sabbaths, while she lieth desolate without them. And they shall accept of the punishment of their iniquity, even because they despised my judgments, and because their soul abhorred my statutes. And yet for all that, when they be in the land of their iniquities, I will not cast them away, neither will I abhor them, to destroy them utterly, and to break my covenant with them. For I am the Lord their God, but I will, for their sakes, remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt in the sight of the heathen, that I might be their God. I am the Lord. These are the statutes, and he takes us right back to what he gave to Moses. These are the statutes and judgments and laws which the Lord made between him and the children of Israel in Mount Sinai by the hand of Moses. So family, the Most High is saying that he's going to remember all of the covenants made with our ancestors. He promised to be our Elohim. He didn't walk away from us. We walked away from him. And it's time to repent, remember what was promised, and ask for the covenant rights to be restored. As I get ready to bring this to a close, I wanted to show you this from the Sefer Bible. And if you have one, you can check these out as well. But I use several cross-referencing sources, but my go-to for the Old Testament is the Septuagint, and for the New Testament, it's the Sefer. And many of you know that when the Bible was translated, words may have been used that didn't fully express the meaning of the Hebrew, because they may not have had an English word for that Hebrew word, or they had multiple meanings for the word and they tried to find the closest match, and vice versa. So I wanted to show you this passage from Mark 14, 22 through 25 from my Sefer Bible. This is when Messiah held the Passover meal with the disciples right before he was taken. Look at how it reads in the Sefer. And as they did eat, Yahshua took bread and blessed and broke it and gave it to them and said, "Take, eat. This is my body." And he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank of it. And he said unto them, "This is my blood of the renewed covenant, which is shed for many. Amen, I say unto you, I will drink no more of the fruit of the vine until that day that I drink it anew in the kingdom of Elohim." And we have this from 2 Corinthians 3, 5 through 6, where Paul says, "Not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think anything as of ourselves, but our sufficiency is of Elohim, who also made us able ministers of the renewed covenant, not of the letter, but of the Ruach. For the letter kills, but the Ruach gives life." And finally, this from Hebrews 8, 6 through 12, and you can see all of my notes on the side as I was studying through this. It says, "Behold, the days come, says Yahuwah, when I will cut a renewed covenant with the house of Yasharel and with the house of Yehudah, not according to the covenant that I cut with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Mitzrayim, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, says Yahuwah. For this is the covenant that I will cut with the house of Yasharel after those days, says Yahuwah. I will put my Torah into their mind and write it in their hearts, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know Yahuwah, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their Torah-less deeds will I remember no more." So I go back to the question that I posed in the first lesson. How could Gentiles have a renewed covenant if they never had a covenant? You all, I am convinced that this word was not translated properly, and the word should be renewed and not new. Based on the information shared, it's hard to see how this could be a new covenant. The precepts are based on what was handed down to our ancestors. Now, I'm sure that we can go back and forth with whether or not the word was changed purposely, but one thing is certain: the covenant belongs to us. Even though we left our house, the place of refuge and safety, to fornicate with the heathens. But things are changing. So I really hope the other nations would meditate on Paul's words here in Romans 11:22. He says, "Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of God on them which fell." They should look at us to see what happened to us. Severity, but toward thee goodness, if thou continue in his goodness, otherwise thou also shall be cut off. So you all, the other nations were allowed to receive spiritual blessings from the kingdom as a result of the blessing of Abraham, because this was to be a manifestation of the goodness of our Father. He did it to make us jealous. But now the other nations have become puffed up and now say they are the Israel of God. How is that when you have no covenant? Paul warns that if you don't continue in Yah's goodness, you will be cut off. That's a warning that should not be taken lightly. Look at what happened to the natural branches. It worked to their advantage that our fall made it possible for a set number of Gentiles to be grafted in, but they didn't want some of the children's bread. They wanted it all. And that's why the church enacted this replacement theology doctrine to erase Israel. And again, remember who I'm referring to when I say the church. I'm using the same definition for the church and Christians that was used at the founding of the religion. I'm referring to those who enacted wicked laws and ignored the laws of Yah. These nations have a covenant with principalities and powers of darkness in high places. And we have to go back to our covenant agreement. Of course, we know that a lot of the laws, the statutes, and commandments will not apply right now, specifically as it pertains to the temple, the sacrifices, and civic duties and responsibilities concerning the land. But we have to acknowledge that there are ways of the kingdom that we need to know and understand. We should know the things that please our Father and know what things displease him. Yes, he's pleased by faith, but also consider that Abraham's faith was made manifest when he obeyed. So, I ask you to consider what was presented and come to your own conclusion after prayer to see whether or not we have a new or a renewed covenant. We're going to continue with the live this coming Wednesday. I want to look at some of the most popular scriptures used in replacement theology. And we might as well go for the jugular and start off with the granddaddy of them all. There is no Jew or Greek. So family, be sure to hit like, share, and join me next time. Shalom, everyone.